G'day guys, there's no doubt that the rate of change in Warhammer 40k rules right now is insanely fast paced. So we've got new releases coming out very regularly, we've got FAQ updates coming out regularly, balanced data slates, new seasons of rules. There's an insane amount of change happening at a very rapid rate. And basically, some people love this, they think this is fantastic for the game, and some people hate it. So I'm not 100% sure which one of these two camps I fall into, so what I've decided to do is release a two-part mini-series where in one part I'm going to make the case for the progressive rapid change model, and one part where I'm going to discuss the pros for the conservative slow pace, slow change model. And then we can have a conversation in the comments below about which of these two systems is preferable. So with that being said, we're going to jump straight into the video, but before we do, just a quick shout out to my Patreon. You can sign up for as low as $4 a month, and we're giving away a free 3D printed Angron this month. All you have to do is sign up to enter the draw automatically, and this model will be in your hands before the World Leaders Codex even hits the shelves, which means you'll have time to build and paint it before you hit the tabletops in early Feb when the World Leaders Codex is in your hands. You'll be ready to go straight out the gate. So head over to our Patreon for more information on that, and let's get into the video.
Welcome to the Black God.
G'day guys, there's currently a huge debate going online about whether or not Arks of Omen is good for 40k or bad for 40k in terms of competitive tournament games and the meta as a whole. So basically what I want to do is a two-part episode, one part making the case for why it's good, and one part making the case for why it's bad, because I'm actually torn here. I don't know which camp I sort of belong to. I kind of belong to both. So basically I want to make those two, and then we'll have a conversation in the comments of each, and then hopefully that'll help me and maybe help you arrive at a sort of, a final position on what you think. So today we're going to be talking about a case for progressivism, so a case for why rapid and dramatic change is good, right? So that's essentially the progressive argument for 40k. We want to just keep moving, keep changing things, keep trying different stuff, throw everything at the fucking wall, see what sticks, break everything regularly so that you can build something new out of the rubble and hopefully build something better out of the lessons that you've learned. And I think there's a lot of truth to a lot of that, right? So yes, it sucks when you finally have something that's approaching balance. But if GW are constantly adding new units, new codexes, new seasons of 40k, what that does is that pushes players into an innovation mindset. So you're if you approach this with optimism, you're going to be constantly looking for new solutions to these new challenges, and that means that from a tournament player perspective, it's going to reward players who can adapt rapidly. It's going to reward players who are not only creative thinkers that can come up with really cool lists and cool ideas, but it's going to reward players that can come up with them fast. And that's a skill, and ultimately the tournament scene is all about rewarding players for their unique skills. So you might have a whole bunch of different skills that you use to get strong results in the games. Like you might have an amazing memory. You might be really good at remembering, rules, interactions, and things like that. And that's a skill that you can bring to the table that helps you achieve strong results in tournaments. Well, one of the other skills, which is becoming increasingly more relevant, is your ability to rapidly digest rules, rapidly identify strengths and weaknesses, and rapidly analyze the metagame to figure out, based on those strengths and weaknesses, how is this going to all play out, and therefore, which ones of these strengths do I want to lean into, and which ones of these weaknesses do I need to avoid. And being able to analyze that rapidly is a skill. It's a skill that you can learn, but it's a skill nonetheless. And the progressive model of tournaments, where they're basically every 6 months they throw out a new season, have pretty dramatic changes within that season, and then within the, that 6 month, they also released 2 or 3 codex books, and each one of them introduces some dramatic challenges to the metagame. Well, that sort of model rewards players with that skill. So I think ultimately that's a good thing, and it's hard to sort of argue against why creating a situation that presents challenges to players that you can then reward them for overcoming. I think it's hard to say that that's a bad thing. So yes, Arks of Omen has created huge waves in the tournament scene, and it's completely flipped a lot of things on their heads, Some of the previous best factions became the worst. Some of the previous worst factions became the best. Some of those middle-ranked factions actually just skyrocketed up into the top. And also on a unit-by-unit basis, some of the most powerful units became redundant, and some of the more redundant units became insanely powerful. There's so many changes. Everything's been flipped on its head. And I can see why that's upset people, and I'll go into that and the reasons why they're justifiably upset in the case for conservative 40k. But it's in terms of the progressive 40k, I think shifting things like that, it just gives people an opportunity to go nuts and really dig down and find all these new power combos, all of this new, interesting stuff. And also another side effect of this is that units that have been on your shelves collecting dust all of a sudden gained relevancy. So you can add them into your army and you can start playing with them. And further to that, it's an opportunity to grow your collection. Now, I know not everybody has the financial situation or the time to be able to do this, and this is obviously what GW is doing it for, it's the financial side for them. But it gives you an opportunity to go, cool, I've got my little 2,000 point army, and now all of a sudden half of that army is not relevant anymore. I need to get all of these other units. Well, now you can go out, you can buy those units, you can build them, you can paint them, and you can add them to your collection. And ultimately, people need to remember this, is that 40k, if you want to enjoy it properly, it's more than just a game, Like, I am a 40k collector. That's one of my things. Like, there's cunts that collect stamps, and that's fine. That's their thing, right? Well, I'm a 40k collector. I collect armies and I collect models. Like, you look at my garage, there's probably $50,000 worth, if not more, of just all of these different armies. I've got every different army. I've got a huge collection, right? That's something I really enjoy. It's just going down there and looking at my collection and knowing that I built and painted all of this stuff, and having the memories from the games that I've played with all of this stuff. And I've got stuff down there that's literally not even a legal unit anymore, like sorcerers on bikes and just weird janky shit like that, So this progressive model of, the 40k seasons and the updates, that actually facilitates the collector. That allows collectors to build their collection in a justifiable way and in an interactive way, because you're building your collection so that you can play with your collection. So that's really positive. It also facilitates the hobby player, the person who enjoys building and painting their minis, and that's one of the things they do for fun, They'll, on the weekend, they'll get up early and they'll go down and they'll paint some minis, or after work they like to switch off from the world and just zone in on this painting thing. It's almost meditative in a way, so it facilitates that, because now you're like, okay, cool, well, I need to buy, these new units. I need to go buy a whole bunch of plasma inceptors or whatever it is. So now you've got something to paint, now you've got something to build, you've got something to work on, you've got a hobby project. So it facilitates that. It also stimulates the hyper competitive players, the ones that the primary thing for them is the game. Well, if the primary thing for you is the game, you've just been given an opportunity to reanalyze the meta, rewrite lists, and then play games against new opportunities and new targets, which is all part of what makes this game exciting and makes this game challenging, is that you've got all of these challenges that you need to overcome. So ultimately, I think this is based on all of those points outlined. This is a strong reason for why progressive model of the Games Workshop seasons is very, very good. It also means that if there is a particular challenge or something that's wildly unbalanced in the meta, it will rebalance automatically, because anything that's completely out of control, well, if they're resetting every fucking 6 months, more or less, well, you know that those problems aren't going to be eternal. And then there's another layer to this. There's so many layers for why this is really good. And another layer to this is that if you've got it resetting regularly, you might really, really like, let's say 8-bound, right? The 8-bound models, you think they're fucking gorgeous, which is, if you do, you agree with me, they're some of the most stunning models GW have done in a while. But let's say they come out and their rules are hot garbage, right? You might be like, oh, that sucks. I don't want to buy and paint these guys and put hours and hours of effort into them if their rules are going to be hot garbage. But the beautiful thing is, knowing that the seasons are going to get reset every 6 months, it's entirely possible that 6 months from now, 8-bound are going to be the most broken, busted, amazing unit in the game. So knowing that they're going to keep resetting it, it actually facilitates you to purchase models and build an army that's not as competitive as the alternatives. Because you don't have to do that, because you know that the season's going to change, and you can just keep running your army as it is the whole time if you want to, and just know that eventually it'll be your turn to be the most powerful thing, you know? And we've seen this, like, Guard have been garbage for so long, and they just got this massive glow up in this new season. So it's like, okay, well, all those Guard players that continuously played Guard the whole time, well, they're now at a huge advantage, because they can jump in straight away. They've already got the Guard army. It's fully built, fully painted, because they've been playing it for the last 2 years. And also, they already have faction mastery. They know all of the units. They know all of the stratagems. They know what everything does. You know, they're at a huge advantage. Whereas the meta chaser player who's gone, okay, cool, I'm now going to add Guard to my army. I'm going to add it to my collection. I'm going to do hobby. I'm going to build and paint this new Guard army, because then I'm going to start going to tournaments with it. There's going to be at least a month or two while they're building and painting that army and collecting it that they're not able to run Guard. So the traditional Guard players have an advantage there, because they can jump straight in. And then even when they do, they're not going to have the faction mastery. They're not going to know the ins and outs of that army. So they're going to be at a slight disadvantage there as well. So it actually, in a weird way, it actually is advantageous for your traditional player as well, because your traditional player is going to have, you know, all of those advantages over the meta chaser. So it's just there's a lot of pros for progressivism in the tournament scene, and for why, you know, aiming for that, you know, constant change, constantly updating everything, breaking down all of the old structures on a regular basis to implement new structures. It facilitates innovation as well, because, you know, you have to come up with new shit. You have to come up with new shit. You know, it's not like you can just rely on Old Faithful, because Old Faithful doesn't work anymore. It's not, you know, so you've got to come up with new, interesting ideas regularly. And I think that's, you know, ultimately that's a positive thing. That's one of the drivers for success, is if you're able to come up with those new things fast. And it sort of creates a innovation arms race, where it's like whoever can come up with the most innovative, most interesting thing the fastest is going to win out. Whereas the people who cling to the old are gonna struggle. So yeah, I think ultimately there's some definitely plenty of arguments for why Arks of Omen, and Arks of Omen in particular, was quite a big shake-up. I know there's a lot of people saying that it's like the biggest shake-up ever. I would like to remind those people that a lot of the things from Nephilim were also very big, like losing half of your command points and having to spend command points on warlord traits and relics. That was new to Nephilim, and that just decimated a lot of lists. A lot of lists just become completely unplayable at that point. So, you know, like my old Emperor's Children list became completely unplayable, because I would often spend 7 or 8 command points in my first turn, whereas now starting with 6 and having to spend them on warlord traits and relics meant that I often only started with 2 or 3. So it was like, oh, now all of my tricks don't work. Or at least I couldn't do all my tricks in the first turn, which made that list unplayable. So, Nephilim was also a huge kick in the junk, you know, and I think there's tons of examples of previous seasons and previous, you know, changes that have been just as big of a deal. So, I think, you know, in terms of scale and in terms of impact, Arks of Omen is probably on par with the others. You know, it is a big change. I'm not trying to downplay that. But I guess the general point is that if you focus on these points, then Arks of Omen is not a bad thing. Arks of Omen is an opportunity to get excited, an opportunity to get reinvigorated, and an opportunity to approach competitive 40k with an open and innovative mindset and see what you can come up with. Yeah, so I'm going to wrap up this video here, nice and short, and then I'm going to immediately record one for the case for conservatism. They'll probably come out a day after each other. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, all that good shit. And also head over to our Patreon, where this month we're giving away a 3D printed Angron model. He'll be in your hands before the World Eaters Codex even hits the shelves. So that's really exciting. And yeah, all you have to do is sign up on the Patreon to enter. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.
Welcome to the Black God.